The United States Navy just discovered that math is a more dangerous enemy than any missile. And the math says Iran can sink 5 American warships in a single coordinated attack using weapons that cost less than a used Honda Civic. The Pentagon knows these numbers. They've wargamed this scenario dozens of times, and every single simulation ends the same way. American warships on the bottom of the Persian Gulf. Here's what the math actually looks like. Iran currently maintains an arsenal of approximately 3,000 to 4,000 Shahed series attack drones. These include the Shahed 136 kamikaze drone costing roughly $500 per unit, the Shahed 131 with a smaller warhead but extended range, and the larger Shahed 149 Gaza reconnaissance and strike platform. In addition to drones, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy operates over 1,500 fast attack boats armed with rockets, torpedoes, anti-ship missiles, and in some cases, rigged with explosives for suicide missions. Iran also possesses over 100 anti-ship cruise missiles, including the Noor, Qadr, and Nasir variants, all capable of targeting vessels at ranges exceeding 200 kilometers. Now, let's look at what those weapons would face. A typical U.S. carrier strike group operating in the Persian Gulf consists of 1 aircraft carrier, 2 guided missile destroyers, 1 guided missile cruiser, and 1 or 2 frigates or littoral combat ships. Total defensive systems across the entire strike group include approximately 300 vertical launch system cells loaded with a mix of SM-2, SM-6, and ESSM interceptor missiles. Each destroyer carries roughly 96 VLS cells. The cruiser carries 122. The carrier itself carries minimal self-defense missiles, relying primarily on its escort vessels for protection. 300 interceptors. That's the total defensive magazine for the entire strike group. Remember that number, because the math that follows will haunt every naval commander who reads it. Let that sink in. Iran doesn't need to build sophisticated weapons. Iran just needs to launch more threats than America has interceptors. And Iran can do exactly that for a fraction of what those interceptors cost. Here's the scenario that keeps Pentagon war planners awake at 3 a.m. Iran launches a coordinated swarm attack using 500 Shahed 136 kamikaze drones, 200 fast attack boats, and 50 anti-ship cruise missiles, all launched simultaneously from multiple directions. From Iran's southern coastline, from islands in the Persian Gulf, from concealed positions along the Strait of Hormuz, from commercial vessels, disguised as fishing boats and cargo ships. 750 individual threats converging on 5 American warships from 360 degrees, all at the same time. Total cost to Iran for this entire attack, approximately $12 million. That's $250,000 for the 500 drones. Roughly $10 million for fuel, munitions, and operational costs for the 200 fast attack boats. Approximately $2 million for the 50 cruise missiles, which Iran manufactures domestically. $12 million total. That's less than the cost of a single Tomahawk cruise missile salvo from 1 American destroyer. Iran can launch the most devastating naval attack since Pearl Harbor for the price of a luxury apartment in Manhattan. Now let's run the defense math. The strike group has 300 interceptor missiles. Each interceptor costs between $1 million and $4.3 million, depending on the variant. Let's assume perfect conditions, perfect radar detection, perfect tracking, perfect fire control solutions, perfect hit rates, none of which exist in real combat, but let's pretend they do. Even with a perfect 100% hit rate, the strike group can engage exactly 300 targets. After that, the magazines are empty. The VLS cells are hollow. The ships have no more long-range defensive weapons. They're defenseless against anything that arrives after round 300. But Iran launched 750 threats. That means 450 threats continue inbound after every single American interceptor has been fired. 450 drones, boats, and missiles heading towards ships that have nothing left to shoot. But wait, the math gets worse, much worse. Because 100% hit rates don't exist. The SM-2 interceptor has a real-world hit probability against cruise missiles of approximately 85%. Against small, slow-moving drones with tiny radar cross-sections, that probability drops dramatically. Independent analysts estimate SM-2 effectiveness against Shahed-class drones at between 30% and 50%. The ESSM performs better against low-altitude threats, but still faces significant challenges against swarm attacks, where dozens of targets arrive simultaneously and overwhelm fire control radar capacity. Let's be generous and assume a 70% average hit rate across all interceptor types against all threat types. That means out of 300 interceptors fired, 210 hit their targets, 90 miss. So instead of stopping 300 threats, the strike group stops 210. That leaves 540 threats still inbound. 540 drones, missiles, and explosive boats heading toward 5 American warships that have exhausted their primary defensive weapons. U.S. Central Command spokesperson Captain Tim Hawkins would describe this scenario as one the United States is fully prepared to address through layered defensive capabilities and superior training. But here's what Captain Hawkins wouldn't tell you. He wouldn't tell you that the layered defense he's referring to consists of close-in weapon systems, the Phalanx CIWS 20mm Gatling guns, which have a maximum effective range of roughly 1,500 meters. That's less than 1 mile. By the time a threat reaches Phalanx engagement range, the ship has approximately 3 to 5 seconds to detect, track, and destroy the incoming threat. He wouldn't tell you that each Phalanx system carries only 1,550 rounds of ammunition. At a firing rate of 4,500 rounds per minute, that's roughly 20 seconds of continuous fire before the gun is empty. 20 seconds to stop everything that got through the outer defensive layers. He wouldn't tell you that the Phalanx was designed to engage 1 or 2 leakers, threats that penetrated the outer missile defense ring. It was never designed to be the primary defense against hundreds of simultaneous incoming threats. Either the Navy believes its interceptors will achieve near-perfect hit rates against swarm attacks, despite zero real-world evidence supporting that assumption, which means they're gambling with the lives of 6,000 sailors, or the Navy knows the math doesn't work and has accepted that some ships will be hit in a swarm scenario, but considers that an acceptable loss, which means individual warships and their crews are considered expendable. Both scenarios are devastating for the families of every sailor serving in the Persian Gulf right now, and it gets worse. The scenario I just described assumes Iran only uses its cheapest weapons. But Iran has been developing much more sophisticated threats specifically designed to overwhelm naval defenses. Iran's Khalij Fars anti-ship ballistic missile is a modified Fateh 1 in 10 with a terminal guidance system designed to hit moving ships at sea. It travels at Mach 3 during its terminal phase. The SM-2 was not designed to intercept ballistic missiles in their terminal descent. The SM-6 has some capability against ballistic targets, but has never been tested against a maneuvering anti-ship ballistic missile in combat conditions. Iran's Sejil medium-range ballistic missile can reach any point in the Persian Gulf in under 4 minutes. The entire engagement window from detection to impact is shorter than the time it takes to brew a cup of coffee. And Iran's newest addition, the Fatah hypersonic missile, reportedly capable of speeds exceeding Mach 13 with maneuverable warheads, designed specifically to defeat Aegis ballistic missile defense systems. No American interceptor currently deployed can reliably engage a target traveling at Mach 13 while executing evasive maneuvers. Retired Admiral James Stavridis, former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, acknowledged the swarm threat in a recent interview. The arithmetic of swarm warfare fundamentally challenges traditional naval defense concepts, he said. When the cost of offense is measured in thousands and the cost of defense is measured in millions, the defender is always at a mathematical disadvantage. Military analyst Behnam Ben Taleb from the Foundation for Defense of Democracies was more specific. Iran has studied American naval defense capabilities for 40 years, he said. Their entire military doctrine is built around exploiting the gap between the number of threats they can generate and the number of interceptors American ships carry. They know the math better than we do. Even former Secretary of the Navy Richard Spencer expressed concern before leaving office. "We are entering an era where quantity has a quality of its own," he said. "Our ships are magnificent. Our sailors are extraordinary. But physics and mathematics don't care about magnificence. If more threats arrive than we can intercept, the outcome is predetermined. 3 defense leaders, 3 warnings, all confirming the same terrifying arithmetic. American warships in the Persian Gulf carry fewer interceptors than Iran can launch threats, and that gap is widening every year. So why doesn't the Navy simply load more interceptors? Because it can't. The VLS cells on American destroyers and cruisers are fixed. You can't add more without redesigning the entire ship. Each cell can hold 1 interceptor missile. When you fired all 96 missiles from a destroyer, that destroyer must withdraw from combat and return to port for reloading. Reloading takes days, not hours. Days. In a sustained conflict with Iran, every American warship in the Persian Gulf would exhaust its defensive magazine within the first 45 minutes of combat. 45 minutes. That's the total defensive endurance of a $2 billion Arleigh Burke-class destroyer against a sustained swarm attack. After 45 minutes, it becomes a $2 billion floating target with no long-range defensive weapons. And here's the cost equation that makes this situation truly unsustainable. If the Navy fires all 300 interceptors in a carrier strike group at an average cost of $2.5 million per missile, that's $750 million in defensive missiles expended. Iran's total attack cost was $12 million. The defensive cost ratio is 62 to 1 in Iran's favor. America spends $62 defending for every $1 Iran spends attacking. Multiply that across a sustained conflict lasting weeks or months. Iran can manufacture replacement drones and missiles continuously using domestic production facilities dispersed across the country in hardened underground factories. America must ship replacement interceptors from factories in the United States across 7,000 miles of ocean through potential submarine and missile threat zones. Iran's supply line is 50 miles from its coast to the Persian Gulf. America's supply line is 7,000 miles from its factories to the combat zone. In a war of attrition, geography alone guarantees Iran can replenish faster than America can resupply. This isn't speculation. This is logistics, and logistics wins wars. The Navy's own internal war games have reportedly produced results consistent with this analysis. A 2022 simulation conducted at the Naval War College in Newport, Rhode Island, tested a carrier strike group against a massed Iranian swarm attack in the Strait of Hormuz. The results were classified, but officers who participated in the exercise told defense journalists that the outcome was, quote, deeply concerning, and highlighted critical shortfalls in magazine depth against saturation attacks. Translation: the simulation showed American ships getting hit, possibly sunk, and the Navy classified the results because they didn't want the public or Congress or Iran to know how bad it was. Today, the Navy has 5 warships in the Persian Gulf that carry a combined 300 interceptor missiles. Tomorrow, Iran could launch 750 threats for 12 million. The math says 450 of those threats arrive at American warships with nothing left to stop them. That's not a military strategy. That's a math problem with a predetermined answer. And the answer is that 5 American warships carrying 6,000 American sailors are operating inside the engagement envelope of an adversary that has specifically designed its entire military around exploiting the one vulnerability that no amount of American technology, training, or spending can overcome: the vulnerability of finite ammunition against infinite cheap threats. That's not a tactical challenge. That's an arithmetic death sentence for any fleet operating within range of Iran's arsenal. And the most terrifying part is this: everything I just described uses Iran's current capabilities, not future weapons, not theoretical systems, not weapons under development. The drones exist today, the missiles exist today, the fast boats exist today, the doctrine exists today. Iran can execute this attack tomorrow morning, and the math would produce the same result it produces every single time the Pentagon runs the simulation. 5 American warships, 300 interceptors, 750 incoming threats, and a $12 million attack that overwhelms a $15 billion defensive fleet. That's not a war scenario. That's a math equation. And the answer should terrify every admiral, every senator, every defense contractor, and every parent whose child is serving aboard one of those 5 warships in the Persian Gulf right now. The math doesn't lie. And right now the math is on Iran's side.